right, welcome back to another episode of the KNL Sports Huddle, episode 35. I'm Cage Kiplinger. That's Logan Hubert. As always, awesome weekend of sports. We had another week of the NFL that absolutely wrecked us on our picks against the spread. World Series games 6 and 7 were absolutely fantastic. And then we've got college basketball starting up yesterday. Got plenty of sports to talk about today. We'll have a college basketball preview to finish things out. We'll have we won't be getting reactions to it tonight, but college football playoff rankings, the first ones for this season, coming out tonight. So definitely keep your eyes out for that. But Logan, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. Like you said, a fantastic sports weekend. It went all the way to Tuesday at 3 o'clock today with the trade deadline. That was much more exciting than I expected it to be. The NFL trade line is usually a dud compared to the NBA.
Right.
But lots of Jets going on a fire sale. That was the big story of that one. But yeah.
Yeah, and definitely something to keep in mind when we get to our picks for this week, as some of those lines have moved based off the trade deadline acquisition. So, but first, I think we have to start where we started last week. Was this with this MLB World Series between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays? Finished just the best way possible with the absolute classic of a Game 7 that I think rivals Game 3 and probably is better than Game 3 because there was quite a lull between innings, probably 11 and 17 for most of that, for the second game of that marathon. But Game 7 was incredible. Have to mention Game 5 with Trey Savage's performance, 12 Ks to basically have a driver's seat in the series going back home to Toronto. But it's like we've mentioned before with this Dodgers team, it is road field advantage.
That's just MLB. That's what I talked about. Is the Dodgers have road field advantage?
Is incredible. So, I mean, Game 7 really it had it all. I mean, it had great pitching from both sides, incredible performances at the plate. You had the 3-run homer by Bo Bichette early in that game. That when that happened, I'm sitting there like, oh wow, Toronto's got this game. It's going to be really difficult for the Dodgers to claw back with the way their lineup had been going up to that point. But they just clawed back. You got the Max Muncy solo shot to make it 4-3. In a really, Miggy Rojas is going to get most of the attention for what he did in this game, but that Max Muncy home run was huge going into those latter innings. We've got to talk about Miguel Rojas. This guy had been sitting on the bench for most of this series, coming through and becoming a Dodger hero in the process with his solo shot with 2 outs to go in the 9th inning. Man, Hoffman had just one more out to get for the Blue Jays, and I know Blue Jays fans are probably hearing all the reactions from everyone are not happy right now, and just with everything that happened with that series. But for Rojas to do that and then to come back in on defense to make that play at home when he looked like he was stumbling on his back foot to make that throw home. As soon as he hesitated, I'm like, oh, this run's going to count, and Toronto's going home in the most anticlimactic way, and Rojas' throw makes it there. What do you think about that whole sequence?
Yeah, like Rojas, just he would have been very low on the list if you were told the outcome of the series.
That on your bingo card.
You were asked who would be the Dodgers' hero. Yeah, he would be pretty low on the list. Yeah, I mean, I can't say I'm a baseball enthusiast keeping track of World Series from the 1910s and 20s and 30s, but I can't imagine a team has ever been as close to winning a World Series as the Blue Jays were. I mean, yes, we've had series go to Game 7s and stuff, but I mean, yeah, they were in full control, and the Dodgers Dodgers just hitting solo home runs. That was kind of how the other Blue Jays victories went too. Blue Jays victories went. They would hit the Dodgers would hit a couple single home runs, but the Blue Jays would hit the 2-runner, 3-runners, or the grand slams. that was the difference in those games. That's what it looked like for Game 7 too. But man, the Dodgers just kept chipping away. Yeah, the ninth inning. Yeah, just one out away. It was was it a 3-2 count too, or was
I can't remember the count. I don't know if it got full, but
I
it
mean
might have.
it was if it was not full, it was close to being full. So like we're already embracing that Otani was gonna come down to Otani because he was next up. But man, yeah, Ross just uh, hit that one, and yeah, what a shocker.
And
Mm.
and then for his throw, Will Smith's toe coming off the plate for a split second that
Yeah, that would,
could have
like you
been the
said, that would have been
difference in the way
that
this
would have been
game ended.
a horrible way to end. I'm glad they didn't overturn. It was so close, but you just couldn't overturn that. It'd have to be three for that. It'd have to be absolute concrete to overturn that, just because you can't have a World Series in like that.
No,
Um, Also, shout out um, Dave Roberts for putting in Andy Pages in the
I saw
outfield.
that when it happened when he pulled Tommy Edman from center field. I'm like, okay, you could put a big guy out there who's really not good at the plate, but is good defensively.
But faster, yeah, faster because they said Edmund had some sort of a lower leg injury
Imagine if
that
you
was
don't make that change.
slowed him down. Oh, I mean, yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible play in the outfield that would have won it. Um, yeah, that would have won it. That was the ninth, wasn't it? Yeah, that was the ninth. Yeah, the ninth inning was the craziest. Yeah, because the bottom of the ninth, yeah, the Blue Jays loaded up the bases with one out and didn't end up scoring because of the Will Smith's um, play. Rojas's throw to Will Smith, and then that crazy Andy Pages catch. And then the top of the 10th, the Dodgers loaded up. If you recall, the Dodgers had the bases loaded with one out, and that one also they didn't score anything on that one either. So yeah, have we mentioned Will Smith yet? Because credit to him, he was
The nail in the coffin.
he put the nail in the coffin. Yeah, heck of a much needed home run because guys like Otani and Freeman and Mookie Betts weren't having it that day. Frankly, Mookie Betts didn't have it the entire series, but credit to him for making the game-winning defensive play. But yeah, it was just an all-timer. Definitely, next closest thing is probably the Cubs Indians 2016. But I
Yeah,
think this one tops it. But yeah, it's been a while since we've had one game that exciting. Game 7 that exciting
yeah.
in the MLB.
You had two teams who clearly were the two best teams in the league. I think some years you don't always get the two best teams making it to the World Series, but I believe we had the two teams that just did all the little things right, and you could see it throughout this series. Um, but there's one guy who comes away with the MVP of the series, and that's Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who, I mean, we talk about Otani doing things we've never seen before. This guy on 0 days rest after 90 some I've heard 94, I've heard 96,
96. I think it was a
96, yeah,
96. Yeah.
96 pitches is again. Remember, he did this in the 18 inning marathon in game 3 after just pitching in game 2. He was out there warming up in the bullpen. I'm like, they're going to put him in after no days rest, and he does. I'm sure he volunteered himself in game 7 to do that. But out of all those guys in the bullpen, you wouldn't trust anyone else but him to get the outs that they needed and to pitch 2 2/3 innings in that game 7. Just incredible. And when they walked, I don't remember who it was that they walked to put the guy on first in that final inning. I said they just need the double play here. That was a good walk to
It
set
was.
up the
Yeah.
double play. And I said all they
Yeah.
need is a good splitter to have a guy chop it into the ground. And what do? They hit it right to Mookie, and he says, "Get the hell out of my way." Steps on second, throws on to Freeman, and as many World Series have ended with an out at first base, Freeman puts his hands in the air and the rest is history. Just an incredible game, an incredible series, and one that I won't forget. I think it's the best one I've seen that I've witnessed in my lifetime.
Yeah. Yamamoto deserved MVP because he was good every time he was needed. He was good. He won game 2,
He
won
shut him
game
down
6.
every time.
and then shut him down Game 7. Shout out to Blake Snell for redeeming what was
Yes.
kind of a poor performance this World Series. He came in and didn't allow any runs. So, yeah, that's why Game 7 baseball is the best, because all the stops are thrown out there, because Dodgers barely used any. Did they use anyone from the bullpen?
No, I think it was all starters.
Yeah, it was all
Well,
starters.
they
Yeah,
use
exactly.
Robleski, I
Oh
believe,
yeah,
because there was
but that
that.
was like in the middle.
Yeah,
That was like in the middle. Like that was after Otani, right? After they took Otani, yeah. Then after him, it was just all the starters. So yeah, what's the Blue Jays' hitter? Who's the guy who set the hitting record uh, for the Blue Jays?
was it Ernie Clement?
Yes, yeah. Shout out to him. He had a great series too. I think who he was the one who had that hit that Pages made the catch on. And whenever I saw like when they got the second out in that inning, and then I saw he was coming at the plate, I'm like, oh, this is probably over, because he was just on fire that entire game. But
Because
man,
when I saw Kike running back to that ball, I was like, he has no shot at this. They were playing so shallow
mhm.
at that at bat. And if you have Tommy Edman out there in center, that's two little guys going up for that ball, and that's a busted play. You needed
Yeah,
someone as tall as Paez was to make that play and just knock Kike down to the ground on that play. Oh man, incredible stuff from this series. This was the most
yeah,
entertaining baseball that if you missed out, you definitely missed out on an incredible series. And then
yeah. A final note, I will just say, just an incredible, true underdog story. The Dodgers are just a
God,
homegrown, built-in talent. Just
uh,
it's the stuff
Logan,
it's the stuff they make movies about. It's
they might make a movie if they three-peat. Um, so yeah, so now
I will say the Dodgers needed that, because if they would have just run away with the series, no one, like, they would have been getting so much hate. But by the way they won it, they're not getting near as much hate as they likely would
yeah, I
have any
think
other way.
earlier in the series I might have been, leaning like in terms of like rooting for the Blue Jays. As the series went on, it kind of felt like my allegiances changed in rooting for this Dodger team, which I would never do on normal occasions. Yeah, it was an incredible thing to see. But by the end of this, me and my wife were cheering for the Dodgers to finally finish it. Uh, so yeah, just so much fun to watch. Yamamoto, just a last note on him. He becomes the first pitcher since Madison Bumgarner in 2014 to have multiple complete games in a single postseason, and the first to have consecutive playoff complete games since Kurt Schilling tossed three in a row in 2001. So that's big shout out to his Game 6 performance that mirrored his Game 2 performance in this series. So, and then to do all that and come back in Game 7, definitely deserved the World Series MVP. There were a lot of other guys that could have. Ramos way up there, Will Smith, but you hard pressed to find someone that deserved it more than him. So yeah, incredible World Series, and we'll be looking at the offseason right now with we think the MLB trade deadline something, or the NFL deadline is something. The offseason for baseball can get crazy with the amount of money that gets thrown around. So um, moving on, let's switch gears to football. So before we get into our picks, I did want to start this segment out with a little contenders or pretenders. And I'm just going to hit Logan with groups of teams or maybe individual teams. At this point in the season, we're halfway through what we've seen so far. Do we believe these teams are true contenders to chase a title or at least a deep playoff run? You can decide that, Logan. And then are they pretenders? And what we've seen is, in due in large part to an easy schedule, maybe just some easy breaks, some lucky breaks throughout the first half of this season. So just going to start at the top with the teams with the best records right now. These 7-2 squads, the Colts, Patriots, and Broncos. So we've kind of saw Indiana Jones get brought back down to earth last week with that performance that looked more like what we saw with him and the Giants. The Patriots, Drake May is third in MVP voting. And with the Broncos, we've seen a great defense and some flashes from Bo Nix, but it's never seemed to quite all be there in some games. So between those three teams, who are the contenders and who are the pretenders, Logan?
The Colts are interesting because as bad as they play with they had 6 turnovers. They had multiple chances to still win that game or at least tie the game, and that kind of reminded me of that one game. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but like 20 years ago or so, whatever, when Peyton Manning threw 6 interceptions against the Chargers and still almost won. So I feel like that's a sign of a good team because you're not gonna play good every week. I mean, you're just going to have bad games. When you have 6 turnovers, you're never going to win. But the fact that they're still in it is kind of a sign of a good team. So I'm going to say they're contenders. The Patriots, I think they're like right in the middle because they're going to get home. They're going to win the division, I still think, because of their schedule. And they deserve, I mean, they're beating all the bad teams, which is what you're supposed to do. They're not laying any duds. I just think they're too young. I think they're too young at this point. So I guess pretenders. If we're talking about Super Bowl, I would say pretender. Broncos, I'm going to say contender just because Bo Nix is in his second year. The offense is starting to figure it out, and we know everything. We know their defense is elite.
So looking at some of these playoff staples that we've got at 6-2 this season: Eagles, Bucks, Seahawks, Bills, Rams, and Packers. These are teams that we normally see come playoff time. Packers at 5-2 because they've got the bye week in there. But out of those teams, who would you say are the pretenders? Because we know a lot of them are contenders at this point because they've been here before. Who are the ones that are pretending at this point?
Green Bay is for sure and I was so happy to see them lose this past week because I'm sick and tired. I'm sick and tired of them playing down to their competition and then pulling it out barely and then having this great record. I was so glad that they finally got caught playing with their food and lost. Maybe that'll help reset them, but at this point I'm going to consider them pretenders because they just I mean they've looked ugly several times this year. Um, Seattle, as good as Sam Darnold's playing, I still have that ugly taste in my mouth from last year's playoff with experience with Minnesota. So I'm just going to hold on that. I'm not going to call them contenders, but but if you watch that Commanders game, that first half, Sam Darnold, that was arguably one of the greatest quarterback halves you'll ever see.
Yeah.
Perfect passer rating, like 16 for 16, 4 touchdowns. I mean, if you get that Sam Darnold, then I mean they're for sure contenders. All those others are contenders in my opinion.
To these 3-loss teams, Chargers, Niners, Steelers, Lions, Jaguars, and I'm going to hold off for the last one. But between those squads, who would you say? Because at 3 losses, they've had their teeth kicked in on a couple of occasions, but who would you say are the contenders out of that group, and who are the pretenders?
So it was Chargers, 49ers, Steelers, Jaguars, and
Lions.
Lions are contenders. I was surprised by last week's result. Like teams have bad weeks, so I'm sure they'll bounce back. Chargers are too injured at offensive line. I'm going to consider them and the Chargers.
The Joe Alt injury is tough to their.
They'll find a way to charge her anyways. Pretender. Steelers are pretenders because they'll do everything they can to get to that. I think this team's better than previous years, so that'll put them at like 10-7. But their defense just sometimes shows up and sometimes doesn't show up, and you can't rely on that. For 49ers are just too injured, unfortunately. And then Jacksonville. I mean, they're pretenders, but they keep finding weird ways to win, which is saying something. But come January, you can't. That's not sustainable.
All right, and the final team I left them off this list. They are a 3-loss team, but the Chicago Bears. So we've kind of seen everything that there is to see with this Bears team. Ben Johnson is an absolute genius on offense to do what they did against Cincinnati in that game. I know it was the Cincinnati defense, but to find a way to win a weird game, which they've been winning a lot of these weird games. They didn't used to win those before. Now they have been able been able to this first half of the season. You're seeing a little bit of growth from Caleb, but at this point, can they contend? I'm not even going to ask the question, are they contenders or pretenders? Can they contend?
No, I don't take, unless you suck against them, any result against Cincinnati's defense or Dallas's defense. I don't. It just doesn't mean anything unless you play terrible, and then that's really concerning. But I don't care how many points you put up. It's an outlier. It's usually an outlier because they do that to every offense. No, yeah, because their defense still isn't great, uh, and their offense is too inconsistent. I mean, we Baltimore just the week before without Lamar just destroyed them. So
Yeah.
yeah, better than by far better than last year. I would be happy if I'm a Bears fan because I think the future does look bright with Ben Johnson as your coach. But as for this year, they're not close to contending. They still have several
All
division
right. Well,
games left too. So
yeah, that's true. And it's one of the toughest divisions in football. So let's move on to our picks against the spread for week 10. Like I said, with the trade deadline this week, the question is about how that impacts the betting lines for this week, maybe even moving forward into future weeks. But last week, man, how did you do? Because I went 4-10. The trap week that we worried that would happen definitely happened, and we leaned into these favorites that just did not pan out. Luckily, Pittsburgh and the Tomlin ride-off spot at least got us a dub there. But what did you end up going last week?
I went 7-7.
Wow, you lucked out
So
much better than I did.
I did luck out. I did well with the evening games. The evening games kind of saved me. I think that's where we differed. I think those were the games we picked mostly the same for the noon slate, but the evening games I think we differed, and I got lucky there. But yeah, I just keep finding ways to hover around 500. So, but I'm gonna change. While you start with the first one, I'm gonna start because I did this before the trade deadline, and I'm going to see how the lines have changed.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
go ahead and start with the Raiders and Broncos.
well, on that note, so when the spread moves from the opening to closing line away from a team, this is for sure happened with one team, one game on the docket this week. Over the last decade on trade deadline week, 62, 41, and 4 against the spread, those teams are when the line moves away from them, including 51 or 41, 25, and 3 against the spread when they are listed as underdogs. And when those teams have a winning percentage of 33% or less on the season entering the week, they are 15-9 against the spread. So let's start with Thursday night football. Raiders at the Broncos. To me, this is a terrible spot for the Raiders, coming off an overtime game against the Jaguars. Now having to play on short rest in Denver against the Broncos is not a great spot. Since the beginning of the 2024 season, Geno Smith has started 5 games in primetime. His teams are 1-4 straight up, 0-5 against the spread, and most of that was probably with the Seattle Seahawks. So with the Raiders, I definitely don't like it. They just traded away Jacoby Myers. So yeah, it's not a great spot. I'm seeing this line at 9.5. I know I leaned into heavy favorites last week. I'm going to have to just run it back this week. The trend for the past few years is that favorites are dominating. Last week, I think, is more of the anomaly rather than the standard. So I will go Denver 9.5 on the spread.
It was fun to see Brock Bowers return. It made the Raiders offense more pleasant to
Yeah,
watch. I
yep.
will say that. But I have this consistent rule that I apply when a bad team comes off a win or a competitive loss where you looked decent, always bet against them the next week, and that's what I'm going to do. Especially like I said, they're on the road at Denver, short week. Denver not coming off a great performance either, but they did win. Yeah, Broncos minus 9.5. I will take. Okay, this spread was 5.5 earlier today. It's now gone to 6.5 in favor of the Colts. This is the Berlin game, so we are back in Europe this week and next week. So it's 6.5 now. This is another case of why a game I would never bet, and you know why? Because who are the Colts facing? The Atlanta Falcons, a team that you really have no idea which version of them shows up. Last week they covered against the Patriots and were a missed extra point away from taking that game to overtime. I'm just going to go Falcons here because it's a Europe game, and we've kind of seen some of these heavier 6.5 isn't I wouldn't consider a heavy favorite, but it's a healthy favorite. We've seen them kind of play down. And it's close and ugly, so that's what I'm going to go with. I see the Colts maybe winning this by a field goal or something. So Falcons at plus 6.5, mostly due to the Europe effect.
Falcons have been the most up and down team this season. And after having a pretty good game last week, like you said, in a loss, I think they'll once again come back down this week and have an awful performance. To me, the Colts are going to look to bounce back after what was a pretty humbling defeat from the Steelers on Sunday. Favorites have excelled in international games, and bigger public sides have actually had success in overseas matchups. So given a touchdown with the 6.5 point spread, I think I'll go with the Colts. I've only missed on one Colts game this whole year, so my betting on Colts games has been pretty good. So I think I'll take the Colts here at 6.5. Giants at the Bears. We're back in America for this one. Um, the Bears and Bengals played an all-time chaotic game last week where there was 8 total lead changes between the two teams. It never should have gotten to that point. The Bears had the game in hand. Um, I looked away from red zone, looked back, and my Bengals were about to win this one. But the Bears own the best turnover differential in the NFL this season at plus 13. And a large part of that is the 13 interceptions on defense, also the most in the NFL. Going up against a Giants team who is depleted offensively, with no Neighbors, no Cam Scatterbo. Um, Even with Jackson Dart's performances, I've got to lean Bears here on what's a 3.5 point spread. Don't love the hook, but I'll take them on this one at home.
Yeah, Giants offense to me is just too limited right now. Dart's fun to watch, but on the road at Chicago, Bears are 2-1 this year at home against the spread. I see them moving to 3-1 at 3.5. I agree the hook's not fun to deal with, but I will risk it and take the Bears as well at minus 3.5. Okay, Bills at Dolphins. So we went with the Dolphins last week on Thursday night, and
That didn't work out.
That did not work out. And I'm going to be a fool again this week. I will take the Dolphins again at plus 9.5. My guess is you'll disagree with me. But the reason I'm doing this is because Buffalo is coming off big win against Kansas City at home. After this week, they're hosting Tampa Bay. I think they're playing Tampa Bay the next week. So this is one of those spots where you could just see them just playing a simple offense just to make sure they win, not doing anything risky to get anybody hurt. Dolphins backdoor cover it. It's at Miami. I don't know if you recall that Thursday night game between the Dolphins and Bills earlier in the year. Dolphins played pretty well in that game. They covered a big spread, and that was at Buffalo. So if you throw that in there too, I just think 9.5 is just a little too much for a Bills team that's coming off an emotional win.
Yeah, what I've learned in picking games against the spread is that you don't overreact to outcomes from the previous week. You don't overreact. Since 2003, dogs of 7 or more at home after losing by 20 plus points in their previous game are 69, 46, and 1. That's 60% against the spread, including 15 and 7 ATS over the last 5 years. Like you said, playing at home didn't help Tua last week, but when Tua is on a homestand, second straight home game or later, he is 10-2 straight up, 9-3 against the spread as the Dolphins starting QB, including 3-0 against the spread as an underdog. The Bills played a great game against KC, but they always do in the regular season. They get up for that game. That's like their Super Bowl every year. I'm banking on not seeing that same intensity going down to Miami. Bills also needed that win to keep them with the Patriots in the AFC East. To me, this one just doesn't mean as much for them. And it's like you said, the Dolphins played well in Buffalo, so I'd expect them to play as well or better at home in Miami. So I'm in agreement with you on here. It's a big spread too, which I love. 9.5. I'll definitely take that with Miami, and we'll double down this week on them and see if we can have what happened with Pittsburgh last week happen for us with Miami this week. Ravens at the Vikings. This one's an interesting one. So you have a Vikings team who were heavy underdogs against the Lions last week, end up pulling out the victory with that one, and the Ravens, uh, like we just said, obliterating the Dolphins last week. The Ravens are 17-8 straight up, but just 11-14 against the spread when playing a game on extended rest with Lamar at QB. The Vikings came up with a massive upset over the Lions. Under Kevin McConnell, the Vikings have played 5 total games directly after facing the Lions, and Minnesota is 0-5 against the spread, failing to cover by 11.9 points per game, losing the game outright by double digits the last 3 seasons. What I said about the Bills applies here as well. I don't think we will get the same fight from the Vikings that they gave to the Lions last week. Now that they're not playing someone that's in their division. So give me the Ravens. It is a 4.5 point spread, which is not a bad number for this game. Give me Lamar to take it to another NFC team.
Something else, this kind of does remind me of weeks 1 and 2, which were the other two games JJ McCarthy started. Um, big win, big opening win against the Bears, divisional opponent, and then next week you're facing the Falcons at home, and you lay an absolute stinker. Here, yeah, big divisional win on the road. Now you're coming home to face a bird opponent again. So, however, I did go with the Vikings here. I still don't exactly trust the Ravens defense.
That's
Um,
fair.
and it's 4.5 at home. Yeah, I just think that's if it was a 3 point, I would go Ravens, but 4.5, I see some value with the Vikings as home underdogs, especially by that much.
When I see 4.5, I think the books. When I see that number, I think the books just don't know which way to go with it. It's
Yeah.
just a number that they kind of land on that isn't around any real key number. So
hmm Yeah, it's true. So yeah, and this seems like a good game to differ from you. Yeah, the odds makers don't know what to do, so we don't know what to do either. So I'll go Vikings plus 4.5. Also, the rare purple versus purple uniform matchup.
love
I
it.
want to see that usually once every 4 years. Okay, game of the week: Browns at Jets.
There's another one on this list that's very much like this one. So this is
Yeah. So the this has shifted. When I did this earlier, it was Jets were 1.5 point favorites. Now, after the big moves the Jets made today, the Browns are now 2.5 point road favorites, and I had the Browns covering it at 1.5 at plus 1.5. So I'm going to also have them covering at minus 2.5. Both teams coming off a bye, um, so neither team gets an advantage with that. The only reason the Jets picked up their first win of the year 2 weeks ago was because they faced the Cincinnati defense, and that won't happen here because they're facing the Cleveland Browns defense with Myles Garrett. So, give me the Browns to cover minus 2.
yeah. So what I said earlier about the line movement from the trade deadline, everyone's going to be down on the Jets this week with Sauce and Quinnen Williams out of there. On any extended prep time, the Browns are 5-11 against the spread under Stefanski, including 0-3 against the spread since the calendar turned to 2024. Their opponents have scored 107 points in the 3 games with Cleveland on extended prep. And in Justin Fields' career, he is 21, 29-1 against the spread, but when he faces a top-notch pass rush, like he will with Cleveland, one who has a defensive sack percentage of 4% or higher, Fields is 6-5 against the spread. With this line turning against the Jets, everyone down on them, just give me the plus 2.5 as my dirty dog of the week. I'm gonna take the Jets here. Again, it's Dylan Gabriel, a rookie, on the road. It's worked out for me before. We're gonna just play this number as it's flipped against the Jets and pick the underdog here. Patriots at the Bucks. So this line is at 2.5, -2.5 in favor of the Buccaneers. Patriots are 7-2 straight up and 6-3 against the spread this season. They lead the AFC East. They're 2-0 in division, 4-0 straight up on the road. Maybe the best note for New England is the fact that they also have the easiest remaining strength of schedule by winning percentage, with their opponents holding a 35.8% winning percentage. It might just be time for the Patriot run to end here. They won last week, but allowed a comeback, which led to them not covering. They've won 6 consecutive games outright or are now underdogs against the Bucks this week. Since 2004, in Week 10 or later, teams on a 6+ game straight up win streak who are listed as underdogs are 27, 42, and 1 against the spread. Give me Baker to do his thing with whatever weapons he has available to him this week. Give me the Bucks at home. 2.5. Give me that hook. Beautiful number, I think. Win by a field goal. I'll take it.
Yeah, if it's under 3, that's great. Yes, I'm in agreement. Tampa's also coming off of a bye, so they've had a chance to get healthier, which is much needed. New England's not historically been the greatest team in Florida. We've seen that they beat the Dolphins earlier this year, but that was a close game, and the Dolphins are the Dolphins this year. Um, yeah, Tampa and Bills later this year, the only 2 games left for New England. Their opponents with winning records. Baltimore, they do play Baltimore. That could change if Ravens catch fire with Lamar coming back. But as of now, yeah, this is one of their only 2 remaining games against a team with a winning record. I actually did struggle a little bit because I feel like we've been in this. There's been situations like this in the past where a team's been, oh, they've not beaten anybody, and then everyone's down on them, and then they go in there and prove everyone wrong. But I think New England's just won too many in a row, yeah, and Tampa coming off much needed rest. I like them to cover that 2.5 point spread. Saints at the Panthers. The Panthers are surprisingly 5-4. I would usually not really care about that, but the fact that they went into Lambeau Field and got that done, I mean, that's you got to give them respect for that. I don't care how. I mean, the Packers played horrible. Jordan Love was awful, but still, going into that hostile environment and winning that's pretty cool. Having said that, if they were playing anybody else other than the Saints, I would absolutely fade the Panthers, not because they're coming off an emotional win. This is the perfect letdown game. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately for them, they're playing the Saints, who are terrible at home. I just can't. I think I said this last week. I just can't pick the Saints. Saints and Titans are just 2 teams I can't pick. Titans maybe now I can because they did cover last week, but Saints I just can't pick right now. So I'm going to take the Panthers at -5.5. Plus, with Bryce Young at QB, they've been really good at home. That one bad game they had at home against the Bills, that was with Andy Dalton starting. With Young, they've been good at home. So
yeah,
I'll take the Panthers at -5.5.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to go Saints here just because it's the Panthers with the 5.5 point spread. I don't love it. But it's like you said, if they were playing anybody else, look, the Saints haven't covered a spread that's been less than 2 scores in a long time. They've lost 10 straight up, with that. Plus 14.5 is the only 2 times that they've covered in the past, 3 or 4 seasons. It's been pretty bad for the Saints, so I'm definitely going with you here with this one on the Panthers. Jaguars at the Texans. Oh gosh, so we have been painfully watching this Texans offense this season. The Texans' red zone offense has been terrible. In 22 total trips inside the red zone this season, they have just 8 touchdowns for a 36.4% mark. Look, the AFC South is very different division this year. In 2024, underdogs in the AFC South went 11-1 against the spread. And between 2019 and 2024, they went 45-27 against the spread, best of any division. But in 2025, dogs in the AFC South are 0-4 against the spread in these AFC South games. The only winless division in the NFL entering Week 10. So Give me Houston again. As long as they hold the line as favorites, it's a 1.5 point spread. I'm going to double down this week. It didn't work out for me against Denver, uh, but I'll trust in this defense to hold Jacksonville.
That will go to 1 and 4 because, as I mentioned earlier, Jacksonville just keeps finding these weird ways to win. It's going to be an ugly game to watch. Possibly no C.J. Stroud. It could be Davis Mills starting. I don't know what the over under is, but I could see this being like a 13-10 game. Heck, when these two teams played earlier in the year, the score was 17-10, and that was with Lawrence and Stroud both playing. Yeah, Houston's defense still very good. Jaguars defense is okay, but if they're facing Davis Mills, they'll be great. So it's gonna be a low scoring game. I'll just pick the team that's been winning more here. I'll take the Jaguars plus 1.5. Okay, evening slate. Cardinals at the Seahawks. Both teams coming off a double-digit primetime win on the road, and the Seahawks are 6.5 point favorites. I'm gonna go Cardinals here. I hope it goes up to 7, and then I'd feel more confident in that. It's just that Seattle's kind of been known to tend to play down their competition at home under their coach Mike McDonald for some reason, and 6.5 is just too much for me. I expect them to win this, but yeah, the Seahawks have just for some reason not been as strong at home as they have been on the road. The Seahawks were dominant last week, but that was at Washington and they're home this week. So give me the Cardinals and Jacoby Brissett, who was named the starter for this
Yes.
game, at plus 6.5.
I mean, I've been telling you. I texted you during that Cowboy game. I think this team just looks better with Brissett at QB. He can see over the line. He's just more efficient in the passing game. And then yeah, you said that Murray will give you the wow factor and give you these incredible plays, but I think just consistency is what the Cardinals need right now, and Brissett's been able to do it for them. I feel like I've been saying the home and road trends for the Seahawks for a few weeks now. We kind of know how it is for them on the road. They're incredible. They showed that going into Washington. But I'm in agreement with you here. I'm going with Cardinals at 6.5. I would love to get it up to 7. I don't know if it'll get there. The Seahawks have dominated the Cardinals over the last few years. 7-1 against the spread, 8-0 straight up since the calendar turned to 2022. However, since the calendar flipped to 2021, 8 teams have had to make a trip to Seattle off short rest, like the Cardinals will do off Monday Night Football in Dallas. Amazingly enough, those 8 road teams are 7-1 straight up and against the spread against the Seahawks, with Carolina being Seattle's only win. Give me the Cardinals in this situation. I think it works out.
I think the last time we saw the Seahawks at home was against the Texans on Monday night. They did cover that, but if you recall, the Seahawks offense did everything they could to make sure they did not cover that. But they were playing the Houston offense, who was just as incompetent. So it was kind of a battle of who wanted to cover. So yeah, you could say, well, they covered last time, but that was not a pretty game at all.
Yeah.
And so,
all right, another NFC West matchup. This one, an all-timer when it comes to coaching. Rams at the 49ers. This line is at 3.5 in favor of the Rams coming on the road. When these teams last met in week 5, the 49ers pulled off an upset as an 8.5-point underdog against the Rams. This coaching rivalry continues to tilt Kyle Shanahan's way. In 18 head-to-head matchups with Sean McVay, Shanahan holds an 11-7 record, both straight up and against the spread. And when McVay is listed as a favorite against Shanahan, he is just 4-7, and including 1-7 straight up in his last 8 games in this spot. Could definitely see the Rams making a surge late in this game, getting the victory, because the Rams have been the best second half team in football this season, going 7-1 against the spread in the second half. But I like the hook on this one. I'll take my tried and true 49ers, who have done me pretty well this season, just figuring out ways to win. Even if this ends close, I think this will be a good cover for them.
Yeah, I don't like the hook, but I'm just fully on the Rams here. 9-2 against the spread in their last 11 games, and I really take the revenge factor here. Big. I could really.
I got
see
that
them.
for the next game.
one. This game, I like this game. The next game we're gonna do. Yeah, I mean, are my two favorite bets. Maybe in the next game after that too. But yeah, I'll take the. We'll differ here. Rams -3.5. Yeah, rematch of an NFC divisional playoff matchup last year, except the home field advantage is switched. Lions at Commanders. Lions are going to be 8.5-point favorites. Last I checked, they're facing Marcus Mariota at quarterback as Jaden Daniels went down with the arm injury. Yes, Lions played bad last week. They're playing a bad team without their quarterback. Give me the Lions at -8.5. Major bounce back spot here for Dan Campbell and his squad.
Ultimate revenge spot for Dan Campbell against a team who is injured and struggling. Last year, Lions lost outright in the playoffs as an 8.5-point favorite to Daniels and the Commanders. They're going to face the Commanders without Daniels. And since 2023, Lions have played 25 games where they lost outright to that opponent in their previous matchup. Detroit is 20-5 straight up and 19-6 against the spread in those games. Yeah, this is just a great spot. Huge spread, but I like it in this spot with no Daniels.
Commanders defense is old and slow. Lions offense will be looking to get back. Yeah, this might go up too.
Yeah. All right. Steelers at the Chargers. This is Sunday night football. Steelers have struggled in primetime with Rodgers at QB. The Chargers are on a 5-game ATS win streak in night games with Herbert at QB, with Justin going 16-9 against the spread overall at night. We mentioned earlier the Joe Alt injury is significant because when Alt plays 50 snaps or more for the Chargers, LA is 14-5 straight up. When he either doesn't play or plays fewer than 50, they are 3-5 straight up. The line is at 3, and I'm going to go with it with the Chargers. I think Steelers are going to end up 9-8 probably to end the year again, and I think they just let's notch another loss into that column. I think Herbert can do enough even with a bad line. He can be heroic and do things that other quarterbacks can't. What Rodgers can't at this point in his career. So it's just a bet on Herbert at this point, and that number at 3 as long as it stays there.
If the Steelers' defensive line can do what they did last week to the Colts with T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith, this is the easiest bet of the week. Steelers +3 because the Colts have been regarded as the best offensive line in football, and the Steelers' D-line just butchered them. Chargers is looking like consistently the worst offensive line in football. Herbert's not having much time to throw. So yeah, if that Steelers defense shows up, it's gonna get ugly for the Chargers.
It could.
But we don't know. It's unpredictable, like you said. Steelers will always just hover around 500. It is worth noting there will be several terrible towels at this game. This will be at Los Angeles, but this game has happened before. We've seen the Steelers go to LA before, and it's just invaded by Pittsburgh fans. So this will basically be a home game for the Steelers. I like the Steelers
and Vikings fans really travel well, especially when they go to LA.
Yeah. I'm going to go Steelers here. I'm just going to assume that their defense plays well for 2 weeks in a row. I think they found something last week, and I think it's sustainable for another week against a bad O-line. So I'll take the Steelers at +3. And finally, Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles, coming off of a bye week, are 2.5-point underdogs against the Green Bay Packers. So I'm now down to 1-7 in Packers games. So you don't have to listen to me here, but I like Philly off the bye here. It scares me that the Packers played a horrible game last week, so they could bounce back, but I feel like that's negated by Eagles having a week off to prepare for this. So I'll take the Eagles at +2.5. That's really all I got to say. Tucker Kraft torn ACL out for the year, so Jordan Love did lose one of his best weapons.
Yeah,
we'll see how that plays into it as well.
Yeah, even after Chiefs Bills, this may be the game of the year. Joining Patriots and Bucks this week, especially given the tight lines for both games. Eagles are underdogs, like you said. That doesn't happen often. Monday Night Football really hasn't been too kind to Philly in recent years since Hurts has been QB. But on the Packers side, losing Tucker Kraft is a major blow for this offense. Before the knee injury that ended his season, he accounted for 23.6% of the team's receiving yards, the highest share on the roster, and led the Packers with 11 red zone targets. Seeing Philly as an underdog, I love this at 2.5. Give me that. I think they'll win this game and really get the Packers on their heels when it comes to their division race. So yeah, give me the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 2.5. I'm in agreement with you there, and that'll wrap things up for our picks against the spread for Week 10. Got to start making some strides here with my picks. I'm down to 53% against the spread on the year, 71-64. Had a hot start, but I've definitely come back down to earth. But I am at profit because you need to be at 52.38% to make a profit. So I am right there on the
So
cusp.
I'm close. I am close. I am 69-66 right now. So yeah, our margins have tightened, but yeah.
Well, let's move on real quick. Do want to point out some college football games this weekend before we move on to our basketball preview. We've got some Big Ten teams, highly top 10 ranked Big Ten teams: Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, all going on the road to face unranked opponents. So definitely keep your eye out for those games. Ohio State has struggled at Purdue every once in a while. Every few years, it ends up being a tough test in West Lafayette. But after their dismantling of Penn State in the second half, I feel pretty good about where their season is
Well,
going. Julian
going
Sayer,
back to yeah, he's been really good this year. Going back to what I was saying with the NFL, bad teams when they play. This is my rule. Bad teams when they come off a win or a decent performance, always bet against them in the next game. Purdue played Michigan at Michigan close. That was Michigan only won by 5. So yeah, I mean Ohio State's gonna just crush them.
the biggest game of the week, I think, is actually in the Big 12. It's two top 10 ranked teams, at least in the AP poll. We'll see what the rankings show for college football playoff tonight when those come out. But BYU at Texas Tech might be the most impactful game of the week. It's nice to see Big 12 getting the spotlight this weekend. The Texas Tech is an incredible team playing at home. Probably see the tortillas come out in the stands. But yeah, that would be the one that I would definitely have my eye on for this weekend.
Just one other thing I want to say is look out. So LSU at Alabama. AP poll, college football ranking hasn't come out yet. Alabama's 4th, LSU unranked. Look out for unranked LSU with an interim coach to make this a chaotic game. I'm just gonna say it's not being talked about enough. We saw Alabama play South Carolina. Was that last week or 2 weeks ago? Unranked South Carolina, and they nearly lost that. Something about this DeBoer era, they don't play very well against unranked opponents, and LSU with an interim coach with the interim coach boost. I'm not calling an upset, but don't be surprised if this game's much closer than it should be.
All right, college basketball preview. We had the first set of games kick off yesterday in college basketball, and we wanted to do our preview for the upcoming season, looking at the Power 5 conference outlooks coming into this year to kind of be the basis of our preview. So we'll start in the Big Ten. I think the question that I wanted to raise here was, is this finally Matt Painter's year? Looking at his resume, he's made the NCAA tournament 16 times with the Boilermakers since 2006. 5-time Big Ten regular season champ, 2-time Big Ten conference champ, conference tourney champ. Made it to the Final Four a couple years ago with that Zach Edey team. He has the preseason number 1 team in the nation with his Purdue Boilermakers and the number 1 preseason player of the year in Braden Smith, who Braden Smith gave Painter 7th AP All-American since 2016-17. They also got San Diego State or South Dakota State transfer Oscar Clough. So there's really no guarantees that he will have a roster as stacked as this one in the future. So what's the outlook for Purdue this year?
Yeah, they're playing right now actually without Trey Kaufman-Wren. He had some sort of hip injury, so they're probably not going to blow out Evansville. But
Purple Aces, let's go.
don't be alarmed. Yeah, don't be alarmed. Oh, they suck. They didn't blow them out. Well, they're without their power forward. So, North Carolina 08-09, I believe, was the last AP number one team, preseason AP number one team to win the title. So that was 16, 17 years ago. So yeah, Purdue will be looking to be the first to do that since Tyler Hansborough in that team. Kansas has sucked in the last couple of years as starting at preseason number one. Yeah, nothing's given, but this is definitely the most on paper stacked team they've had. Last time we saw them took Houston, national runner-up Houston, to the very end of that game. So it shows you that without Zach Edey, they're still a good team. And then they add all these guys are now seniors, add a couple transfers. On paper, they have every reason to be number one, but we'll see once the season plays out. Elsewhere in the Big Ten, I think Michigan and Illinois are going to be right there behind Purdue, possibly right there with Purdue. Illinois diving into the European transfer, European players again, and they got what's his name? They get Stojakovic. Was that or was that Cal? Didn't they get Stojakovic in the portal?
It's I think it's a different Croatian type name that you're
A
thinking of
different
it.
Croatian
Yeah.
name. Okay. Okay. Well, but yeah, and then Michigan, second year under Dusty May. I think that they'll be pretty good as well. And then right below, and then everywhere else, it's a logjam. All these teams could finish really high or could just miss out on the tournament. You got Wisconsin, the two LA schools, USC, UCLA. Michigan State's not. This is kind of an under the radar Michigan State team. Usually they're overranked about every year. This year they're not getting as much hype as they usually are, so that could be beneficial to them. Oregon's bringing back a lot of the same guys from last year. That was kind of an underrated team, in my opinion. Ohio State put up 116 point or 118 points against IU Indy yesterday.
My alma mater.
Yeah, your alma mater. Don't look at how many points they gave up in that game, but
oh man,
yeah,
I couldn't be happier to see my two favorite teams putting up that many points.
Yeah. Lately, Ohio State's just been one of those teams that can beat anybody or lose to anybody. Like they went into Mackey Arena last year and won at Purdue. That was really impressive.
In Diebler's first game coaching them.
Yeah, but then they missed the tournament too. So it's yeah. And then Indiana has the potential to be last year's Kentucky team. What I mean by that is an entirely new team, entirely new identity. And then comes in, plays really well, ends up as a top 3 seed. That I'd say that they have potential to be that. We know nothing about them because none of these guys have played together before. New coaching staff, but they're definitely a team to keep an eye on. Okay, the other big name conference is the SEC. They had 14 teams make the NCAA tournament last year. 2 teams make the Final Four, and they ultimately had the champion in Florida. As for our prompt for this discussion, you were talking about will they regress, and I said yes because there's really no other way. They can't really improve from that. I don't think so. I do think they will regress. Difference this year is I don't think there's as much top end talent. Like I don't think the team. I think Kentucky could be really good. Florida, I know they lost last night, but they still have that national champion pedigree. Plus, they have 2 transfers at the guard position. So, over time, that could be a team that gels and becomes really good at the end. And Alabama's could be a team too. But it's going to be all those teams right below that in the tier. It's going to make or break, decide if the SEC is going to be as good this year or not.
Yeah, you mentioned that Kentucky could be really good this year. They better be, because they're paying their team reportedly $21 million, which is more than Ohio State's football team from last season that won the national championship. So pretty high expectations for Kentucky. Um, yeah, the talent that left Florida is big. I don't know that they could, you know, you don't even really see the question, can Florida repeat as champions? It's going to be really difficult to see them make it all the way back. But yeah, 14 of the 16 teams earning NCAA tournament bids last season, arguably the strongest conference in men's college basketball history after topping the Big East 11 bid tally in 2011. Um, so yeah, it should be a pretty interesting conference that has been largely the strongest in basketball the last couple of years. Um, but yeah, one league that hasn't really been is the ACC. Can this league bounce back from last year's disappointment? And what's been kind of a disappointment for the past couple of years, but the conference sent only 3 teams to the tournament last year for the first time since the 99-2000 season.
And
Um,
two of them lost in the first round, too.
Exactly. Now, Duke looks like it should remain at the top as a tournament contender, as it has always been. But UNC's fall off showed the difficulties that many programs are facing in this new climate of college basketball. Can this roster save Hubert Davis's job, which I think is the hottest seat in the nation right now? On the flip side, ACC is bringing in Will Wade from McNeese State to coach in NC State, as he brings on Darian Williams and a lot of other top talent to that program, which could help bolster this conference's uh, outlook for the year, as well as Louisville. The resurgence with Louisville and Pat Kelsey. What do you think about ACC being able to bounce back and get more teams into the tournament, and really like the Hubert Davis issue?
I think they'll get a few more. It's kind of assuming the SEC doesn't get as many as last year. Um, Clemson's always another team that just never a threat, but they're always around that 5 to 8 seed line in the tournament. They're a team that usually makes it. I expect UNC to bounce back, not to their elite levels again, but a competitive level. Um, Louisville and Duke, I feel like are clearly the top tier teams in this conference. I'm excited for next week. We get the Duke and I mean not Duke, Kentucky U of L game next week. That game's usually later in the December, but it's actually happening next week, so that'll be a fun one to watch. But yeah, the Boozer twins and all of the hoopla that Duke's brought in recruit wise, they won't. Their personnel will be different than last year, but as far as their ranking, it won't be much different than it was last year.
Yeah. And then for the last two conferences, Big 12 and Big East, are highlighted by two guys, really. Two players in the Big 12, Darren Peterson and AJ DeBanza. And then the Big East, it's the two heavyweight coaches, Rick Pitino and Dan Hurley. Um, Darren Peterson, AJ DeBanza will be definitely competing for the Big 12 Player of the Year, probably the NBA first pick. Got to see DeBanza play last night, put up 21. He's quite the talent, but they will be, competing with All-Americans JT Toppin from Texas Tech, PJ Haggerty at Kansas State. So they might have something to say about that.
Don't forget about Koa Pete too. He put up 30. He put up 30 points last night in his debut.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's sustainable, but if he can replicate some of that this year, he'll be named to watch as well for that Player of the Year.
Yep. With the Rick Pitino Dan Hurley rivalry, we've seen a lot of coaching rivalries in this sport, from Krzyzewski and Roy Williams and Wooden and Newell, Knight versus Keedy. This St. John's UConn trading dominance the past couple seasons, as both programs enter this year with national title ambitions. Their rivalry is really going to add a lot of excitement and intensity to this Big East conference, and really the sport as a whole. I think it's a treat to watch them every time they're on our screens.
Yeah, really, that's really all there is to say about the Big East. UConn and St. John's are clearly above everyone else this year. Creighton, Marquette might be lower end tournament teams. They're like the St. John's and UConn are clearly above everyone else. St. John's disappointment in the tournament after such a great year. They kind of didn't look like they deserved that 2 seed by how sloppy their offense was. And then UConn's just looking for a bounce back year. They earned the 8 or 9 seed last year and got bounced by Florida in the second round. pretty low achieving UConn team if we're looking at recent history, because Dan Hurley, I'm sure, wants to get back to that national championship game that they won 2 years in a row.
Probably the greatest college basketball team in the history. But one last note, Houston, who was the runner-up last season, they may not be number one in the AP poll, but they are number one in KenPom, which factors in a lot of different statistical stats that strength of schedule, opponents, all that stuff. So we'll see if Kelvin Sampson's crew can make it back. Love that team from last season. We'll see if he can bring them back in a deep tournament playoff run. That'll do it here.
All Sharp had to do was not just stay on his feet and hit that three. That's all he had. They were that close to winning the title. Just don't. When you have a defender in the air, don't leave your feet. Just shot fake, let him fly past, and then shoot. If they would have done that, they would have won.
We've kind of come full circle with this. When we first started this podcast back in March, it was heavy on college basketball, so we are back into this thick of the college basketball season. We'll probably put this to rest until conference play comes around, when the calendar turns over, as we continue to focus on football. But that'll wrap it up for us here at the K&L Sports Huddle. We'll be back next week, of course, with more picks against the spread. That'll do it for us here. We'll see you all next week.